right, episode number 1 of a new podcast. You can't begin to understand the trouble I've gone through trying to get this podcast to happen. Hopefully it's finally going to be up and out there today. This guy on the side of me that you don't recognize, just to introduce you to him, that's Bryan Krall. He was my draft expert back in college, draft guru, whatever you want to call him. Back then, I didn't realize you're supposed to have credentials. He has none of those, at least not in football.
No.
None of those in football, but maybe some other credentials we can use a little later in the podcast. Now, it's going to be a 4-part podcast. 3 episodes are going to be pre-draft. This one, we're going to talk about the quarterbacks. I think 5 or 6 guys, basically, we're going to go through. Next episode, the plan is to do a mock draft, 1 through 32, assuming I'm prepared. I just started, by the way, Brian. I used to, back in college, I'd sit in the library with you, and we'd both do mock drafts. I used to do a lot of draft research aside from just watching football. I hadn't done it this year, but I'm not working now, so I started the other day. I'm actually putting together a big board for myself. So that's going to be our next episode.
There we go. Yeah. All of the people watching this are totally judging us, by the way.
I mean, that's fine. I will be judging us too. Third episode, since we know you're probably a Lions fan, we're going to talk Lions draft, and then finally, 4th episode, we'll react to the draft. So again, this is Brendan and Brian Talk Draft. Episode 1, Talk Quarterbacks. Now, Joe Burrow, we're just going to start at the top and work down for the most part. Joe Burrow, obvious number 1 pick, obviously a Cincinnati Bengal. Best quarterback prospect since who?
Yeah, I mean, I got to say Andrew Luck. I mean, I don't remember a draft that's had a quarterback just nailed in at number 1 since Andrew Luck. I mean, RG3 had a great year that year, but even he couldn't touch who Luck was as a prospect, and obviously rightfully so. But yeah, I mean, he is. He's just got pretty much every tool that you would want in a quarterback.
Brian, you've been a big draft guy for a long time. Is he the second best quarterback prospect you've ever paid attention to? Well, because I mean, I'm trying to even think before Andrew Luck, and yeah. I think so he's clearly the best since Andrew Luck. I think we're on the same page there. And you don't need to have a definitive answer, but even dating back pre-Andrew Luck, where there might be a little more competition, I don't know that there's a clear-cut answer.
No, I mean, I'm trying to think. I mean, Vince Young was up there.
He was
Matt Stafford obviously was up there. That's a good question.
And Matt Leinart, whoever was first, I don't recall. I'm pretty sure Matt Leinart went 9.
I'm going to be a loser and look this up.
No, go ahead. I was a big Matt Leinart fan. I love that USC team. And I remember wanting Matt Leinart. I'm pretty sure the Lions took Ernie Sims in that draft. So, I remember this stuff by memory. So go ahead and call yourself a loser.
Ernie Sims, I
have an autographed Ernie Sims jersey.
Number 3.
Okay, so Vince Young did go for him to Tennessee.
Yeah, that was the draft where Mario Williams went 1, Bush went 2, and then Vince Young went 3. Leinart went 10.
But trying to bring it back to what was that, 2007, 2000? Trying to bring it back
2006.
Trying to bring it back to 2020. We agree the best since Andrew Luck. Are there any concerns for you with 1 year wonder?
Not really. I mean, anyone who watched the guy play, can tell that the guy can play. I mean, I think the only concern that I would have is he's going to be a Cincinnati Bengal. I just don't see it. There's no holes in his game.
And we will get into him being a Cincinnati Bengal because it's a given, basically. When I think about the 1 year wonder kind of thing, what comes to mind is that his 1 year was the best year in the history of college football. And by the way, that's not really debatable, right? That's just accepted fact.
I think so. Look at his numbers; it's ridiculous.
Well, so I know the years that come to mind are Johnny Manziel's last year. I think Tim Tebow's in the conversation.
Sure.
Oh man, I mentioned one other name that I forgot one other. There was one other name, but there's a couple names up there as the greatest years, and those guys necessarily didn't translate to the pros. So just to kind of play both sides of the fence. But ultimately, I'm not too worried about the 1 year wonder either, because when I've watched this guy, and this is the most college football I've watched in a long time. Being in Texas, there's just a lot more people interested in college football.
Yeah.
And watching him, particularly the thing that really convinced me that Joe Burrow is going to be special, is watching the deep ball. If you're not familiar with it, I'm doing a rewatch of the 2011 Lions season right now, 2 weeks at a time. And 4 weeks in, the thing that's really caught my attention is where Stafford was with the deep ball at that point in his career. And Stafford, I mean, in 2011 is, I think, like when we decided Stafford was going to be a good quarterback, but even then, he didn't have any accuracy in the deep ball. He put it up, let his wide receivers go and get it. And I think there's a lot of good quarterbacks in the NFL that do that today.
Sure.
But Joe Burrow, watching him against the best college football defenses, even 40, 50 yards down the field, I trust him to hit it on the spot. You mentioned the biggest knock on him is that he's going to be a Cincinnati Bengal. And I actually think that is a weird narrative. Not that the Bengals are a good organization by any means, but the number one pick is always a really bad team. And I actually think you could argue the Bengals have had more success than many of the teams that we've seen pick number one overall in recent history.
Yeah, I feel like the Bengals in recently, maybe not this year, because they actually, but they just haven't shown that the owner wants to spend money to make this team better. I know that's been something that's frustrated Bengals fans for a long time. And so, I mean, I can't talk about, terrible football teams being a Detroit Lions fan, but yeah, he's got a good receiving base there. He's got a good running back in Joe Mixon. That offensive line is atrocious, but they'll just have to, like you said, most teams that pick number one are usually pretty terrible.
And the skill positions are actually, I mean, A.J. Green and Tyler Boyd are both really good. Obviously, Who knows how much longer A.J. Green will be there. And Joe Mixon, a strong running back. Like, he's got the skill positions. You wish he had a better offensive line. I just don't think, I think it's a weird year for the narrative to come out. I think, we don't really hear this normally. But this year, Joe Burrow and going to a bad team is all of a sudden a narrative. And, the Bengals haven't had a quarterback since Carson Palmer. I mean, Andy Dalton had a long career, but Andy Dalton wasn't winning anything.
Is that because of Marvin Lewis being the head coach? I mean, he had Carson Palmer. They didn't win a playoff game ever. No, I agree. I don't think it's as bad as being drafted by the Redskins. I think that when you take Andrew Luck's situation in Indianapolis, that was literally the perfect situation for him. Goes to a winning organization.
Hold on, though. That's the rarity. That's the playoff team, Super Bowl contender, has quarterback, Hall of Fame quarterback injured, misses entire season. Dan Orlowski started games for that team.
No, that's fair. That's a fair point. But I mean, I'm not a fan of the Bengals front office. Even when you look at interviews with Joe Burrow, it seems like he really wants to go there. So I can understand it.
All right, moving forward. Now, I mentioned Brian may have some credentials that could help us. I'm not gonna label you an expert. You can tell us how much you value your own opinion on this. But Brian, you are a physical therapist. I'm curious about your thoughts on Tua.
Tua's me. He really scared. I mean, I am not I do not work with athletes primarily.
And you don't work with him
with high
either.
School, from college. Exactly. So, it's from my very limited experience working 3 years in the field. I can tell you that some people tend to be injury prone, and it's a scary thing for Tua. If you're investing that much. What's that?
You are one of those people.
I am one of those people. That's right.
Brian famously once injured. What was it? What did you injure stepping out of a car?
My knee. Yeah, I tore my meniscus. It was great.
You did was
great
step
story.
out of a car, right? You didn't do anything.
I mean, I like to say that it weakened after hours of playing basketball, but no, it was literally just
I'm sorry, Brian, as a non-radio guy, just a piece of advice. I don't know, something. It's important to let people know who you are. So it's important when you're critiquing injury-prone people that we include that you are one of them.
This is if I was into a situation and I got tackled by a 300-pound defensive lineman, I wouldn't be giving up. Like, I'd be dead. Just, I'm done. It's cool. No, my knees would not
But
survive.
so
But with Tua, it definitely is something, and you can see it in the latest, some of the latest news around the league or scouts are talking about is he's just falling down boards because of the injury issues.
where are you on? Is there value in a redshirt year for him? Is that not necessarily a thing that? Because I think when people talk about Tua needing a redshirt year, it's not based on his ability; it's based on his injury. Is there value in something like that?
Yeah, I mean, you can put him through as many drills as you want. You're not going to get the unpredictability of a playing field. You know, I see a lot of ACLs, and so I'll take soccer players or basketball players, and I can put them through some of the some exercises that will mimic what a playing field will be. But the thing is that they can still kind of predict what's going to happen, and so you really don't know until you're on the field, and that's why I think giving him a red shirt season is definitely the thing that you would want. So you look at teams like Miami, they have Ryan Fitzpatrick. Have him sit for a year. Ryan Fitzpatrick's been in the league for 50 years. He's got plenty of experience.
Yeah, but he doesn't do well. He doesn't do well when he goes in as a starter. He only does well when he takes the job.
That's true. But, they just named Tua the day one starter and then put him in.
But see, I think Miami makes sense too because they're a team that has clearly gone the tanking route. Most teams, it sucks. I don't think you want to give your quarterbacks a redshirt year if you can avoid it. Obviously, it worked in Mahomes' case, but you only have 5 years of that cheap contract,
right?
And so it sucks if you have to go that route. But if you're gonna go that route, a team like Miami, who's embraced losing, getting another top pick because they don't have their rookie quarterback, or I don't even know. Maybe Ryan Fitzpatrick is better than Tua. Day one. I don't know. You laughed at that. Is that unthinkable?
No, I don't think so. I mean, he was the team's leading rusher last year, so maybe Fitzmagic has some stuff left in him.
Now, I don't think you've mentioned on the podcast, but you've mentioned it to me. You, even as a Lions fan, would have had interest in Tua if it wasn't for the injury.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you watched him at Alabama, there's some knocks on him that he was playing with pro level talent. That's great, but so is Joe Burrow.
Yeah, but Alabama, what happens is you look back at an Alabama roster from 3 years ago, and they have 5 starting offensive linemen in the league, and a starting receiver and 4 starting running backs. Sure, LSU had pros too, but Alabama is pros. Like it is a knock for me on a level, and more so, it's a knock because I'm a believer that there's a lot of value in looking at what positions have succeeded out of what schools. And of course, there's always going to be outliers. There's always going to be exceptions to the rule. But I don't remember Alabama quarterbacks worth anything. And there was a little thought where A.J. McCarron could be an NFL starter, but that was brushed over very quickly.
When you look at those dominant Alabama teams back, when they were winning it every year, the Greg McElroys and those offenses were reliant on the running backs. They were reliant on Derrick Henrys and the Mark Ingrams, and but the Alabama offense has changed ever since Jalen Hurts came in. They've adopted more of a modern system, so I'm not sure if that narrative is still steady. And if anything, I mean, we're talking about pro level talent. It almost gives more weight behind the Joe Burrow being a one-hit wonder type of player, because you look at the talent that he's around him. He's got a first-round pick at receiver this year. He's got Thaddeus Moss, who's one of the best tight ends or receiving tight ends in the draft this year. He's got a possible first-round pick at running back, and I'm trying to think of the other receiver he has, but he'll be a first-round pick coming up. I can't think of his name, but anyways. So if anything, it kind of gives weight behind that theory.
Now, injury included, this is obviously not for the Lions, I got so many angles on this. Let me actually do this first. If Tua's healthy, does he compete with Burrow as the clear number one? Like, is Burrow no longer the clear number one if Tua's healthy?
I think he is, but I think that there's definitely more of a conversation behind it
More
now
than
because
Andrew
you
Luck,
look
Robert
at
Griffin?
Tua. Yeah, I think so. If you look at it, Tua, you've got the one-hit wonder who had the better year with Burrow, but then Tua's shown time and time and time again that he's consistent and he's, I mean, fantastic. So, yeah, Tua doesn't have the arm that Burrow order. But overall, I mean, I think that they're a lot closer than Luck and RG3, and that's just my opinion from a guy who doesn't know anything.
I do want to say this. I was thinking about it as you talked. He doesn't have credentials. That doesn't necessarily mean he doesn't know anything. Brian is a big college football guy, a big draft guy. He does. The reason, so this, I'm not like an interview guy, and I don't consider this an interview.
No.
But you know more about college football and you follow the draft closer than I do, and I enjoy it, but I value your opinion. I find myself not even really paying attention to Tua, and it probably has a little bit to do with the fact that, like, I've never been a huge college football guy. I've been a more regional college football guy, and then I start doing draft research because I love the draft. And so I'm early in that stage. Like, I just started doing draft research, like, literally yesterday. And when it comes to Tua, I didn't really watch him prior to this year because I didn't watch a ton of national college football. And this year's when the injury happened. And so I watched some of him, but not enough to, like, be super high on him. And then you include the injury. Plus, like, you have the clear-cut number one in Burrow. You have another guy we're going to talk about, a couple other guys we're going to talk about, but in a Jordan Love, who may be a first-round draft pick. And then Herbert, who I hate. But, like, it just seems like there's other options where, I don't know, I find myself ignoring Tua other than, will someone trade up and give the Lions a chance at Chase Young? Given the injury concerns and knowing what we know, is he still worth the trade up for somebody? Be it Miami, be it the Chargers, be it the Patriots.
Yeah, it's a good, and that's what we're gonna find out. And this is why I get into the draft, because the storylines. It's better than The Bachelor. People, this is great. This is good stuff.
I promise you something. You don't have to convince anybody watching this that the draft is better than The Bachelor.
Even though The Bachelor was pretty juicy this season, but anyways. Yeah, I mean, this is the fun stuff. Is someone going to say, what, screw the history, screw all the injuries, we're going to go up and get our guy? And it's, I love the week or two before the draft because all of the news is complete crap. Like you hear news of, like, yeah, the Dolphins, all of a sudden now, Herbert is their guy. I'm convinced these teams know, months ahead of time.
This year might be a little different, though.
I mean, that's fair. Without the pro days, without you really just had the combine and the Senior Bowl. But I don't buy the hype that, like, all of a sudden teams are liking Herbert over Tua. I feel like if that was the narrative, then they would have done that before Tua got the full medical clearance. So.
All right, moving on. I have no idea where you are in this guy. Convince me Justin Herbert is not Mitch Trubisky. I don't want to call him 2.0 because that implies he's better. Convince me he's not Mitch Trubisky, like, version 0.5. He's not the beta.
He's not. No, he's not Mitch Trubisky. I'm trying to think of a good comparison of him.
Joe Harrington.
Oh gosh.
I just don't like Justin Herbert. I wouldn't touch Justin Herbert. I don't think I'd take Justin Herbert in day 2. And this is a guy, by the way. So during college football season, I worked a lot at night. And when you work in sports radio, there's, like, TVs all over the place. So obviously I'm keeping an eye on college football. And every time I looked up, Justin Herbert was overthrowing somebody on a 7-yard pass.
It's because he's got the big arm. That's all, he can throw it 90 yards. But yeah,
I'm sorry, if you can't throw in Colorado, like, I don't respect you.
At least he's playing in one of the best conferences, the Pac-10, or is it the Pac-12? I don't know what it is now. That is the Pac-12. There we go. There's like 16 teams in there, but Playing against Colorado State, and actually, no, I think they're Mountain West. Playing against Colorado and
And
Washington
USC,
State, and
Washington.
the worst USC that's ever, worst USC team that's come out of there in years. No, it's a fair point. I mean, he just wasn't good this year. I'm kind of on the same boat. I'm not. I think I would, if I'm the Patriots at 23, and somehow he slides that far, yeah, I would take him. But you look at the other guys. I mean, I like him more than Jacob Fromm or Eason.
Something that's interesting about Herbert,
give him some credit. Come on,
is that I think before the year started, QB1 was Tua and QB2 was Herbert, and I think the thought was Herbert would probably be a top 5, top 10 guy. I think what's interesting is when you look at his numbers, it wasn't a bad season.
No.
But he still slid down draft boards, and I'm kind of curious as to what that is because, admittedly, like I'm watching Herbert while working, right? Like I didn't watch him super closely. I didn't evaluate him as like a scout, but I just wasn't impressed whenever I saw him. His numbers his senior year, 67% completion percentage, which was up from 59 last year. That's significant. 3,400 yards and 32 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. The numbers tell me he's good. My eyes just don't.
Yeah. My computer's playing an ad right now. Sorry about that. I was looking up some stats for him this year. One of the biggest knocks about him was that he would beat up on the little guys. Look at Arizona. Just throw this up there. 333 yards, 20 for 28, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. But it's Arizona. Who I think it's Kevin Sumlin is their head coach now. But when you look at big games, going at Wisconsin, 14 for 20, 138 yards, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception. They won the game somehow, but I mean, you're looking at, he goes up against at Arizona State, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He was inconsistent. I mean, and I think that's the biggest knock on him. He started 4 years. So if you're not seeing improvement, like if you look at Justin Herbert last year, in 2018 to 2019 season, he played better than he did in the 2019 to 2020 season.
Significantly,
and that's definitely a concern. Yeah, I mean, I think teams that fall in love with him love the 6'6", 240, huge arm. Got some nice athleticism to him, but yeah, the inconsistency is huge. Like that's the reason. Let's put it this way: if he was consistent this year, and if it was just a matter of talent around him, and he showed that he is, he can make, he can put some touch on those intermediate throws, and he's not just a big arm, then I would say him and he would go toe to toe with Burrow. But he just doesn't seem to have it.
Is he clear day one? Is there any shot he could fall out of day one?
I mean, I think you can have that conversation with Love. I don't see it with Herbert. There's too many quarterback needy teams that are going to take a flyer on him. Like I said, if the draft always shocks us, but if there's any chance that he slides down the board, I don't see him making it past New England.
There are some people, I mean, like you said, everything's crap, adamant that they like Jarrett Stidham.
Sure.
That would be the one way. I see. You say there's too many quarterback needed teams. I look at it and think like once you fall past the top couple, and he's not going to go in the top couple. At least I don't believe so. Unless Miami passes on him and wants him at 18. The Raiders are a team who made sense for a quarterback for a long time, but to me, like going and getting Mariota, are they going to have 3 quarterbacks that all have to get a roster spot? I mean, Gruden is old school, so maybe. I guess I said this on another podcast. A team that's not discussed that maybe should be is Jacksonville, but I hate Herbert. I hate Herbert so much. Like that. Like I'm like I would rather have Gardner Minshew.
I mean, he's more marketable.
He's way more marketable. I don't know. I guess to me it feels like the team that takes Herbert is maybe putting him behind somebody, and I don't know, man. You said there's more of a discussion with Jordan Love. Does he fall out of the first round? I happen to think one of the two goes in the first round. And it probably will be Herbert because he is ranked higher by most people. But if they both go first round, that's 4 first-round quarterbacks. And you said there's a lot of quarterback-needy teams, but I would almost say that we're getting to a point where there's less than there's been in a long time. And there's quarterbacks out there.
The only reason
Cam Newton doesn't have a job. Jameis Winston doesn't have a job.
That's crazy. And I think the reason for that is there's a lot of teams with older quarterbacks or maybe quarterbacks near the end of their contract that teams might take a flyer on. You take a team like New Orleans, for example, sitting at 24. If he falls there, they're going to take him. Talking Herbert. Even you have Green Bay at 30. If one of those two quarterbacks, I just read a report today that Green Bay has been, doing a lot of homework on Jordan Love. So you got these teams with older quarterbacks that these teams might want to take a flyer on. I'm not even convinced Minnesota with 2 first-round picks might not look at a quarterback like Herbert.
In a way, you're saying what I was kind of suggesting, that there's a real chance that if Herbert goes in the first round, it's because somebody sits him behind their starter. I would love nothing more than the Packers drafting Justin Herbert with the attempt of doing what they did with Aaron Rodgers, and then Aaron Rodgers retires on Justin Herbert's 5th year of his contract. He's just a dumpster fire. Just sit your first-round draft pick for 4 years to find out he's a dumpster fire.
I mean, as Lions fans, we've had to deal with Favre, we've had to deal with Rodgers. Give us some kind of hope here. Why couldn't they have just stuck with Matt Flynn?
All right. Now, on a big board I'm looking at right now, Jake Fromm is number 4 quarterback. You told me you don't like him. We don't really need to discuss him. I'll put it this way. I was surprised to see him at 4. He's one of those guys who I said, I think this quarterback class is interesting because you have the Joe Burrow, who is the clear-cut number 1, the Tua, who has that ceiling as a number 1, but has the injury concerns. You got a Justin Herbert, who was very high, still probably a first-round draft pick, future Mitch Trubisky. Then you go to a guy like Jordan Love, who is very clearly, you're drafting him with the intention of him starting at some point. Jake Fromm, probably the same. Maybe not immediately, but I think if you're taking Jake Fromm or Jacob Eason, you're probably looking at them as starters at some point in their career. Jalen Hurts is the dart throw, taking a risk. Yeah. But there's certainly people who think he could start. So there's I would say there's 7 guys you think have a chance to start. But let's move on to Jordan Love, a guy who the show that I work with here, prior to being furloughed, and hopefully when I'm done being furloughed, the host is a New England fan, so I'm tend to be a little more of what's going on, aware of what's going on in New England. And supposedly they really like Jarrett Stidham, but if it's not Jarrett Stidham, a lot of people think it is Jordan Love. You said that you think Love is more likely to fall out of the first round, but you also seem to think that there's a lot of quarterbacks going to go in the first round. What is the likelihood Jordan Love's a day 1 pick?
I actually think it's very high. The knock on Love is this past year wasn't very good. Well, he's playing at Utah State, and he lost a lot of talent from the year before. So just reading off his stats from last year, he had 3,400 yards, 17 interceptions, and 20 touchdowns. The year before this, so that's a QB rating of 129. Okay, so the year before that, he had 3,500 yards, 32 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions with a 158 QB rating. That's a huge drop-off. Now, chances are Jordan Love did not just start sucking at football. The supporting cast around him, especially playing at a small school like that, I think has a lot to do with it. And he has all the intangibles that you would want. He's got huge arm, really nice touch, and then he's he's an athletic guy. He's 6'4", 230. He can run the ball. He's definitely a guy who I don't see him falling out of the first round. And real quick, going back to Jake Fromm, I know we're not going to really talk about him too much, but how you feel about Herbert, I feel about Jake Fromm.
Well, the difference is that I actually was caught off guard to see Jake Fromm as the 4th on a big board by somebody. I haven't even seen him discussed as a possible day crazy. 1. In fact, I don't even know that he's he's a day 2, but is he an early day 2?
I've heard everything about him. I mean, he's just kind of all of the boards that I've seen, he's just kind of bounced around. I've watched him for 2 years now. I just don't see it. I don't like the guy. I don't. If he's on my board, I would have him listed below Eason, Love, Hurts, kind of in that.
That's it.
Yeah, he'd go below them. I'm looking at these other guys. Okay, I put him above Brian Lewerke.
My list has Nate Stanley from Iowa after Jalen Hurts.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So I think you're putting him above that.
Yeah, for sure.
But
he's in that, like, James Morgan,
he's
Anthony
in that.
Gordon.
He is the start of for you guys you wouldn't take as future starters.
Correct.
Because even I'd take a flyer on Herbert in the third round. He obviously won't be there, but that's where I'm at. Back to Jordan Love.
You really hate Justin Herbert.
It was all in the background, but I watched a lot of him. Oregon plays late games. I can't tell you how many times I saw this guy miss throws, just like short, easy throws. He just was so bad. I think I watched every interception he threw last year. So sample size maybe wasn't fair. Back to Jordan Love. I don't think I watched any Utah State, honestly. The one question that I have to bring up about Jordan Love is there's a lot of positions in the league where you can succeed as from a small school. But quarterback, what do we got? We got Case Keenum out of Houston. Carson Wentz out of North Dakota State. Do we have anybody else?
Wow, that's a good question. You can always throw out the Kurt Warner comp. That was a little while ago, but Ryan Fitzpatrick from Harvard. Come on.
Yeah, but again, Ryan Fitzpatrick. Ryan Fitzpatrick is a comp to himself. Like, he's a different kind of quarterback. He only succeeds when you don't expect him to.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I'm trying to think. That's a good question. Tony Romo came out of like Sam Houston State or something like that. So I mean, like,
it's not impossible. That would be the only concern I have about drafting a guy high. And Carson Wentz, given where he came out of, I mean, you literally couldn't ask for anything more, whether or not you're a Carson Wentz fan. And Case Keenum was a 7th round draft pick, I believe. So expectations were low. Yeah. Jordan Love is significant investment, because if he's not a day 1 pick, he's probably an early day 2 pick. In fact, I think that's going to be one of the most interesting parts to watch in the draft. Is if Miami and LA don't both go and get quarterbacks, I don't know if there's anyone else at the top of the draft that screams quarterback. But I have to think if one of them doesn't get one on day 1, they're going to on day 2.
Yeah, and I would have put Carolina in that as well until they got Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy Bridgewater's
a little too young to feel like they're going to go out and replace him.
Right. Yeah, I think he's 27, so he's got some football left in him. I think they signed him to a 3-year deal, so to bring in a quarterback with the 7th pick, I'd be pretty surprised. You brought up Jacksonville earlier. I could see that. I don't think that they're comfortable Gardner Minshew going forward. So you got 2 first-round picks. But I think if they were to draft a quarterback, I would imagine 20 would be the spot. Anything before that, I mean, the 9th pick, that seems pretty high. Pretty high, especially considering the rest of the teams that are going to be in between those 2 picks.
But even early 2nd, there's going to be guys there or likely going to be guys there who compete for jobs.
One of my favorite quarterbacks in this draft is Jalen Hurts. I think you can get Hurts at the end of the 2nd round, early 3rd round, and
I do want to. We'll get to him shortly. I want to start wrapping this up here. Jacob Eason, my knowledge of Jacob Eason is fairly limited as well. Despite them also playing late games, I'll say this: I follow a lot of people in sports media in Seattle, just because I have a fascination with the city of Seattle, and most of my knowledge comes from their tweets, and they are high on the guy. They think he's a very high level quarterback. But I think they were mostly disappointed with his season. And I think this is a guy prior to this season who you thought could be a first. I think he's entirely lost that designation. Still probably a safe day 2 quarterback?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this guy is among the Justin Herberts where, didn't have a great year, but has all of the intangibles you want for a quarterback. So, he has a huge arm, but he just didn't have a very good year this year, and he lost the job to Georgia to Jake Fromm. How do you lose a job to Jake Fromm? So I always like to look at where these quarterbacks come from. In high school, Jacob Eason was a 5-star quarterback. He has literally all the tools, but especially last year or this past year, just the accuracy throwing on the run. A little bit more Washington games than I did Utah State, so I have some familiarity.
And let's wrap it up with Jalen Hurts. You said one of your favorite quarterbacks.
One of my favorite. I love Jalen Hurts.
Like even not value wise, like legitimately one of your favorite quarterbacks.
Yeah, legit. Like I like him more than Jordan Love, and
is that it? So would he be four? Do you like him more than Herbert?
The only I'm torn. I'm torn with that comparison because Herbert is all potential and he literally has like all the tools. But if I were to say, if you're taking Herbert in the late first or Hurts in the early third, I'd take Hurts all day with that value. In terms of comping, I'd probably take Herbert over him.
I watched a fair amount of Jalen Hurts, and I like him. Obviously you can run in the NFL. Lamar Jackson showed it. You know who comes to mind when I watch Jalen Hurts at the NFL level, because this guy tore it up in college too, is Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah.
And like, I think some people hear Tyrod Taylor and take that as a shot. I think Tyrod Taylor had his time as a good NFL quarterback. I don't think he's ever been, and I don't think Jalen Hurts will ever be, an elite NFL quarterback. But I think like you can get some good years out of them. And I don't think anybody's ever schemed around Tyrod Taylor. I think we have some head coaches who now recognize, as Brian, you just went full screen on me. I think some coaches recognize now, like, if you get a guy like Hurts, you have to build the offense around him. And I think you can be successful with Jalen Hurts if you have a coach who's willing to do that, because some coaches won't.
That's
I just
perfectly said.
I just don't think. I think even with that, you're probably not looking at a superstar. You're not going to get what Lamar Jackson gave the Ravens.
Mm-hmm. I think that Jalen Hurts the perfect team for him, and I think is the New England Patriots. And the reason I say that is, Jared Stidham, and I'm a big believer in Jared Stidham, actually. I really liked him coming out of the draft last year.
You keep trying to get them quarterbacks.
But, I know, yeah, right. Jalen Hurts he's the type of guy that I think Bill Belichick would fit really well with what Bill Belichick is trying to do. He is always a team-first type of guy. I mean, you look at last year, or 2 years ago, excuse me, he stuck with the team knowing that Tua was going to be the starting quarterback, and he stayed there. And they needed him later on when Tua got hurt. I mean, he is a total team first type of guy. He is experienced. He has won a national championship starting.
Can step into a winning culture, which matters.
Yeah, I mean, you look, and I think the experience he got from going from Alabama to Oklahoma is invaluable. You're looking at two kind of different offenses there, and he was successful with Oklahoma. He played really well. So I think that a team drafting him, I think he's going to go in the late second round if I had to guess. But I think a team is really going to get a good player here.
All right, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Again, we're going to have 2 more episodes coming before the draft. One of them will be doing a mock draft, Brian and I just alternating picks. And then the other one, we're going to talk Lions draft. And then after, of course, we'll wrap everything up. Thanks for listening and watching this experiment of a podcast. I don't know if it counts as a podcast when it's on video. Once again,
experiments are pretty.
Thanks for watching this experiment. This has been Brendan and Brian Talk Draft.